Hello, Facebook Live and YouTube streaming. You are here at Wine Cellars Wine Weekend, and we have a bonus tasting today. Normally, we do them on Wine Cellars Wine Wednesdays, and Wine Cellars Wine Weekends are on Saturdays. We had an adjustment to our schedule because we wanted to include a gentleman who brings us great wine from several different properties. So hopefully where you are today, it is nice, warm weather because we are going to be tasting crisp white wines and a rosé. Here in Chicago, where I am, it's a beautiful sunny day with 70 degrees, perfect weather. And I'm going to take these bottles of wine up to the rooftop deck after our tasting and enjoy them in a nice sunny atmosphere. And if you missed it and you're not familiar with Wine Cellars Wine Weekends, I'm your host, Lee Schlesinger, and I'm the Vice President of Wine Cellars in charge of portfolio management and education. So thank you for joining us today. I mentioned that we're going to visit a couple different properties and taste whites. So we're going to go to relatively cooler climate regions and taste wines that are help crafted and created by what I would call a modern day flying winemaker. What's a flying winemaker? A flying winemaker is somebody who spends the Northern Hemisphere harvest and the Southern Hemisphere harvest on opposite sides of the seasons. So that they can actually work all year round, working harvest in the two hemispheres. So we're going to have a very international guy doing very international things join us. Your friend, my friend, Mr. Jan Cooks. Jan, welcome to Wine Cellars Wine Weekend Bonus Edition.
Hi, Lee. Thanks. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here. Yeah, where do we start?
Well, let's start how you got to know and get into the wine industry at all.
Oh, that's a long story. I would probably beat people to death. So who am I? What do? I make wine in a couple of places all over the world. As you said, Austria and New Zealand. So not Australia. Fortunately, not Australia. That's a kind of a Kiwi joke, you know. So Kiwis.
Well, I see the shirt you got on there, so I can tell.
Yeah, right. I put it on just for the occasion. Can you see it? So the All Blacks T-shirt from the national rugby team. So that's a must.
And you're joining us from Switzerland, yes?
Yes, I'm joining you from Switzerland, where I live. So I take care of a couple of different wineries all over the world. I work mainly with organic, sustainable, and biodynamic properties, but mainly producers who've gone organic for a long time, and mainly for quality reasons. So should we start with Stefan's wines?
And let's start how you got involved with the Pratsch family.
Right. So I've basically been making wine now for 30 years. I studied winemaking in Germany and in Bordeaux, and specialized in business development. So I wrote my thesis in developing wineries, and then went on to build wineries. I ran several different wineries mainly all over Germany. And then about 13 years ago, I had this kind of a little bit of an epiphany where I said, most of the producers are always in the same boat. Producers who are focused on only one thing, and that's quality. And what they do is they work, and then all of a sudden, once harvest comes, they totally panic. They don't know where and what to do. It's all just work. And so usually it's always the same case. The tanks are full, stock is full, bank account is empty. So what do? You lower the prices. So that's not really a feasible, let's say, exactly downward spiral. That's not really a very solid basis to start any business on. Not
sustainable.
Exactly, not very sustainable. And so basically what I did was I went out, got in the car when I started my small little company, and went out and looked for talent. So I was like a talent scout. looking for people who know what they're doing, but they don't understand how international markets work. They've never been to international markets. It's like the main question is, what happens if the product doesn't sell? How do we make products that sell? How do we find people who are good? Like wine cellars. How do we find them? What happens if the car hits a tree? How do problems? We kind of build the bridge between the producer and the importer. And then we take it one step further. So we go back and forth between the importer and the producer and try to reshape and redevelop the portfolio. And for some countries, like for the US, we might have a portfolio that is not the same as with, for example, in other countries, like in Sweden or in Finland or wherever.
Or the domestic market where they do most of their sales. Yeah,
correct. And so with Stefan, I found Stefan 13 years ago. He was basically one of my first clients, and he was 21 years old, believe it or not.
And up here. Let's go ahead and add him to the stream a little bit.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you.
Continue the narrative here.
Great. So Stefan was just 21 years old. He had a couple of awards under his belt. He had when he turned 14, he had decided to go into winemaking. So the company back then basically just consisted of wine, a little bit of wine, a little bit of livestock, and a lot of agriculture. So what they said was, we'll clear out the livestock, we'll take all those stables and refit them and put some wine tanks in there, and we'll just take off from there. So this is Stefan today. I think he's probably one of the most remarkable winemakers in Austria today. A wonderfully positive person. He's someone who's really, really great to know. But I think the most important thing is what it all comes down to is, of course, his dad, who laid the foundation. So if you can go one picture there. No, back, please. Yes, perfect. So this is Austria. So to the northeast of Austria, in the right-hand corner, that little yellow point there, that's Vienna. So the capital of Vienna, and Stefan is to the northeast of Vienna, right about there. Yep, right about there. So this part is extremely flat. So you have a very, very, very high amount of wind, and the predominant wind comes from the northeast, so mainly from Poland, from Russia, Ukraine, so very cold winds and very continental climate. So with the wind, of course, you also have a lot of drying, and of course with continental climate, long dry summers or long wet summers. But there's always a tendency. It's not like, let's say, more to the west, countries in the west, like let's say France or let's say Germany. They have a more Atlantic climate, so very changing and irregular patterns, whereas here it's very, very regular. So a lot of drying out. So Stefan's dad, who was very, very innovative, thought, oh, you know what? I'm going to, if I can get all my products from agriculture and wine onto a very stable level, onto a continuous level. So each year, a very good crop level, very good quality, et cetera, I would be in a great shape. So, but how do I do that? He understood the only thing that will help is, of course, the soil. So the soil is the real big important thing. And so if you can go just one step further, this is what soil after 20 years or 25 years of organic winemaking looks like. So very high in compost, and that compost will retain the water. So this is exactly what we're destroying with conventional agriculture or conventional viticulture. We're destroying all the different agents that are important to develop humus, and this takes time. This takes at least 7, 8, or even 10 years of time to develop this amount of compost. So this picture is extremely important to understand, is that basically we're not digging very deep. Stefan just took out a shovel of let's say the first 30 centimeters. This is the effect of a long-term organic buildup. So this is what helps to get the plants without any stress through a hot, dry summer. And with, for example, Stefan was awarded in 2013, he was awarded Best Grand Cru of Austria by the leading gastro or on-prem magazine. The irony about it was for his 2012 vintage, and the 2012 was a drought vintage. So I went to visit Stefan 2 weeks before harvest, and sunflowers were literally just about like up to your chest. That's how dry it was. That they had not developed. His neighbors' vineyards were small. They were super stressed. The canopy was just literally just like maybe 50 centimeters high. 50 centimeters. Like this is the thing that most people don't understand, and this is what makes me so passionate. Is if you're a chef, let's say, if you're in a restaurant, you could and you get a delivery of, let's say, something faulty. So let's say some faulty salad. You can say, well, look, I won't really take this. I'll reject it. I'll take something else. Okay. So, but we can't do that. That's like game over. You have to run with it. And if your business depends on, let's say, cars, and you make cars that have 3 wheels, well, good luck with selling those. I don't think a lot of people will buy them. So we can't go to our clients anymore and say, well, it was just a bad year and we'll just have to figure out something else. That doesn't work. Those times are over. We have to make products that are like a Swiss clock, that tick and work under various different conditions. And we show a lot of these wines, like wines that are like 15 years old. We show them at trade shows. These wines are ageable. This is the beauty about it. These wines are durable. Because this is the beauty about organic wines, is it's all about the micro elements. There's a very, it's like that. It's like a little bit like that movie Super Size Me. If you give your body big chunky molecules, like let's say fries and burgers all day long, the body will get lazy because it's not getting the micro elements that we need, to build up enzymes and whatnot. Same thing with the plant. If we give the plant big chunky molecules like nitrogen and phosphate and potassium, whatnot, it will get lazy. It's not going to bring in the micro elements, and the micro elements are only something that can be transported with water. And so you always have to keep one thing in mind. In Europe, you're not allowed to irrigate. So everywhere where you go through, let's say California or Oregon or Washington, all these vineyards are irrigated. These vineyards in Austria are not irrigated. Okay, so it's a very, very important thing. And so we're basic with organics. We're actually bringing in the entire surface of the vineyard with all the little micro elements that are going on. This is not organics. There's a little bit of a misconception about organics. A lot of people think organics is about smoking a joint and howling to the moon. That's not it.
No, that's fine.
That's not it either. That's not it either.
There's a little bit of power.
Yes, it's understanding what you're doing and understanding all the different microsystems that are going on in your soil. That's really important. And it's not the kind of fuzzy, warm feeling that a lot of people try to convey. But I'm getting thirsty. Should we try something?
We should try something.
Yeah.
So,
I only have the rosé here, so I'll stick with the rosé. But you start with the Oh yeah, that's a great picture. Great. I'll just quickly discuss that. So if you can just zoom in on that, those little white poles there, those are of course thanks. Those are windmills. So these are of course to develop electricity. That's how windy it is. So the first wine that we're having, do you want to say something about it, or should I say something about it?
Yeah, I have 4 house wines that I work with that's being currently poured at Flussinger. And there's 1 white, 1 rosé, and 2 reds. And the rosé will taste after we taste the red. So it's the next 2 wines that
Okay.
I have an affinity for. I love it because it's so crisp, so clean, and I think it translates Gruner from what we're looking at into the glass so precisely that it's just hard to deny how food-friendly it is, how refreshing it is, how clean it is, how well-made it is, and so affordable, too, is the crazy part.
Yeah. So Stefan is located, as I was saying earlier, to the northeast of Vienna, which is called the Weinviertel or the Wine Quarter. So this was the region where the emperors of Austria would always buy their wines. So they would not go to the Wachau. The Wachau was too far away. And it's actually the only region that is under UNESCO World Heritage supervision. So that says a little bit,
Yeah, let's. I mentioned Gruner, and
Yes.
we talked a lot about terroir, and let's
Yes.
talk about Gruner and how it reflects our terroir here, and what
Yes.
the combination of factors makes it so special.
Yes, perfect. So this is the picture here is a picture of Stefan's vineyards, or one of his vineyards. How does terroir reflect in a wine? That's really, really important, I think. There are some varieties that don't really reflect terroir that well. Some do better than that. I think Gruner Veltliner is definitely one of the varieties that definitely shows terroir. So for those of you who don't understand the concept of terroir, it's basically the entire sum of the exposition of the soil, of the composition of the soil, the amount of water that comes over the entire time of the year. It's the soil composition under the soils, so the subsoils. It's a multitude of different things that will transpire into the grape, and thus, of course, logically into the wine on a regular level. So it's like. And so the more consistency you have, then you can say you can talk more of a really clear distinction of terroir. So in case of Stefan's wines, or in case of Stefan's soils, most of his vineyards. Can you go back, please? Thanks. So most of his vineyards are long rolling hills. So. I always like to say it's the flattest part of Austria. Most people always think of Austria as being mountainous, which it is, but there's like maybe 10% of Austria which is not mountainous. And so these here are basically alluvial soils that were leftovers from the ice ages when the glaciers retreated. So you have a lot of different types of soils. It's like a big mess, basically, of different soil types within one vineyard. And that's a little bit of a challenge for a winemaker, because you have to really understand what you're planting there. And so Grüne Veltliner, which is the most important white variety of Austria, has a very, very good ability or suitability to different soil types and different setups and so on and so on. Excuse me. And so Grüner Veltliner, like for example, will be coming later on to the Rotenpüllen. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's actually next, so you can lead us right there.
Okay, so just a few quick words to the first wine. That's just the basic entry level Grüner Veltliner. I always like to say this is the wine that you want to have when you come home, when you've had a long day, when you've had a rough day. It's like a nice little dog waiting on your doorstep and who wants to be cuddled. That's the Grüner Veltliner. So you just have that kind of a fresh, zippy taste, clear away the day with the first glass, and just feel instantaneously relaxed. That's the whole idea behind that. The other thing is also what I like to say is that it's what you like to drink while you're cooking, and that's the crossover to the Rotenpüllen. The Rotenpüllen is the wine that you would like to have when dinner is served. So Rotenpüllen nobody really knows where the name comes from. It's been around so long. So Stefan's family has been in this town, Hohenruppersdorf. It's a very, very small little town, for generations. They don't even know how long. So they've been in this town for a multitude of generations. This name Rotenpüllen, people don't know where it comes from. It's probably some kind of an old German word reaching all the way back to the Middle Ages, probably something like reddish loam, because there is a very, very distinctive red, like an artery of reddish loam going right through the vineyard. And Stefan's vines in this vineyard are 45 years old. They've had 30 years of organic treatment. Now, coming back to that picture that I showed you earlier with Stefan's shovel, think about that. Thank you. Think about what 30 years of organic viticulture does to your soils. And so coming back to that picture, when I was saying Stefan's wines were awarded Best Grand Cru of Austria in 2013 for his 2012 vintage, his neighbor's vines, they were all drooping like a plant that exactly they're all drooping like a plant that you've forgotten to water, And we went through the Rotenpüllen, and he had topped the vines twice that year because they were growing. His neighbors were just like literally 50 centimeters high. The canopy the canopy was that high, so they were stressed to the core. And his vines were like the leaves were showing upwards, like give me more sunlight, give me more. The photosynthesis was just going, like nonstop, and the vines were so healthy. This is exactly what organic viticulture, long-term organic viticulture, does to you. There is no other way to explain it.
Yeah, I say that conventional agriculture, use of pesticides, fungicides, is like medicine after you have the disease, whereas organic viticulture is more like prescriptive, like before you actually encounter those difficulties.
It's exactly in line with modern medicine. As conventional is just trying to cure the bruise or the cut, and organics is really from the root upwards.
And preventative.
And very preventative. And I would even go one step further. You're doing something against climate warming, because you're actually building up humus, which is retaining basically all kinds of carbon related CO and CO2 related byproducts.
Yeah, and things that convert it as well. Exactly.
I just want to say a few things to the Rotenpüllen, because I think this is probably this is absolutely his flagship wine, and this is something that I always like to stress. If you think about the diversity of kitchens, of cuisine styles that you can serve this wine to, it's mind-boggling. I always like to say, take all the different kitchens around the Mediterranean. So starting in Spain, with tapas, or then go to France with some small little, vegetables. Go to Italy. You have a light pasta, or some great seafood, or you go over to Greece with some seafood. Turkey can be a little bit hot. Some things might be a little bit spicy, but then you go over to places like Jordan or Israel with mezze and these kinds of fresh foods. Perfect. Or then you go on to, let's say, Morocco, with spices and just, it's just really mouth-watering already. Sorry. And then you go, and then of course you go to Southeast Asia, so to places like, let's say, Vietnam, or Indonesia, or Thailand, or just even sushi. I mean, you always say sushi, of course. Thanks. How could I? Sorry. But then, of course, like if you go to California, and the entire Pacific Rim kitchen that's going on in California is just made for this Grüner Berliner particularly.
Yeah, super versatile. 4-degree alcohol, bigger. And that's because of longer hang time, or a prescribed idea about how you want that wine to show.
Yep. And I mean, the Roten Pöhlen it's a fantastic price quality ratio from my point of view.
Yeah, and we're talking under $20 for that guy. Well, around 20-ish. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it adds another layer of spice, certainly a little bit more power, but still keeping the same acidity and general profile with more depth. And you like to decant this wine, or even have this wine with significantly more age than the 2018 that I'm drinking.
True, exactly. I personally always like to recommend to decant it for at least an hour, and especially in a red wine decanter, because what will happen is so you always have to come back to the winemaking process and what is actually happening outside in the vineyard. These vines are receiving a lot of, let's say, all the beauty of nature in the soil, and that transpires into the glass. So these wines are closed like a genie at the moment you open them, but what is it, what, help me though, in Alibaba,
the genie.
The what?
The genie.
The genie, yes, it has to come out of the bottle, but you have to rub the candle, not the candle, but what is it called?
It's an oil lamp.
The oil lamp, thank you, exactly. So you have to rub the oil lamp, and then, so basically that's exactly what's going to happen. If you give it a little bit of air, then the genie comes out.
Well, my 2 cents on this is that you have a very reductive winemaking process, which means that there's not a lot of oxygen that gets to this wine. Sure. So it's really kind of what I consider closed down, so that it needs some oxygen in order to start pulling out some of these aromatics and complexities that might be hiding in there. So that's what that aeration is doing for us.
Right.
Yeah. And a little bit of age will help with that too, or the decanting that you mentioned. So we're drinking this 2018 in its infancy, but really deep, complex flavors on this Gruner. And people always kind of like look at me sideways when I say, you think Gruner can age? And I say, yeah, you don't think Riesling can age? Inexpensive Riesling isn't meant to age. Inexpensive Gruner isn't necessarily meant to age either. But when you get an aged version of Riesling, people go gaga over it. And I think you can make that same parallel here. Totally.
Exactly. That's exactly right. I like to call them misconceptions, basically, is Gruner. There was a time, of course, where Gruner wasn't made to age. Yes, but these times are long gone. These were that stopped in the 80s, and that had, that still had its part in history. But Stefan is someone of a newer, younger generation who really want to bring it out and bring their knowledge out and show what they can do.
That's a great overview for me. I think the only thing that we missed, two things that I'd like to touch on. One is we actually sell that first Gruner in a liter bottle as well.
Yes.
And I thought I was talking with somebody last night and was explaining why Gruner was ever sold in liter bottles, and the kind of idea of going around, since you are in kind of what we would consider suburban Vienna, what the city folk would go out and do is go on picnic and drink a liter, sometimes mixed with seltzer water and spritz. So can you give us a little bit of that culture that we don't understand here in America?
So basically, the local pairing would always be. Oh, that's a great picture. Thank you. The local pairing would always be something like, let's say, a Wiener Schnitzel, which is calf, so veal, and a little bit of potatoes with it. And that, together with Grüne Veltliner, is so super appetizing. So you usually have that for lunch. No, it's not usually, not every day, of course, because otherwise you'd be, anyway. But that's something that
playing for the All Blacks,
right? Yeah.
maybe first.
That's definitely like the classic pairing.
Right. And I love when I was there, we were drinking. We had a little bit, maybe #too much fun, but the culture of consuming is definitely there, but consuming with some level of moderation. So I saw a lot of and hear a lot of stories of people making Grüne Veltliner spritz.
Yes, true, absolutely true. So it's definitely something that is extremely good on if you're like super thirsty. People like to be outdoors. They like to be on their bikes and go hiking or whatnot, and they usually have like a bottle of seltzers in their backpack and a bottle of wine. So if you come by a little brook or something and you just throw the bottle of wine in there, chill it quickly, and have some seltzers with it, that's perfect. That's like absolutely perfect. That's what a lot of people do. Yes.
Let's taste my other house wine.
Yay! I'm having it.
So, are you got 18 or 19 or 17? What do you got over there?
I'm still on 18. I'm still on 18 here. There we go.
So tell us a little bit about the composition of the wine, and
yes.
This is now our
perfect. Could you just wait? I'll do it. The vegan. Yes. So as of 2015, everything with Stefan's his entire production, we decided to go vegan. So same principle as with organics. You actually increase the quality on a long-term basis, and at the same time you open a new door for additional customers. So same principle as with vegan. We actually worked on different types of fining agents, and then found this vegan product, and said, hey, it actually increases the quality, and so we'll just go with it. That's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. So rosé, definitely by far my favorite product for everyday drinking with Stefan's wines. The idea behind the rosé was that we wanted to make something lower in alcohol, so maximum 11.5 volumes %, not too heavy, so that you can easily have another glass of it, and you don't notice it straight away. Very, very crisp aromas, fresh and very, very bright, So a little bit of strawberry, raspberry, little bit of cream going on as well. So it's very, very beautiful. Very versatile too. So you can easily drink it by itself. You can have it with food. With my personal favorite is something like linguine with a little bit of salmon and fresh herbs. That is, like or something like estragon. That is to die for with this wine.
Perfect.
Just the combination of the two. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. And it's very food friendly. I think it's the best selling rosé in your book, if I'm not totally wrong.
It's up there.
It's up there.
And not just because of the depletions that take place in Shea Schlesinger.
Yeah.
Which there's plenty. Hey, one of the things that I was noticing, we kind of touched on it. We were talking about reductive winemaking and cool temperature fermentations, and all this is to preserve the maximum amount of aroma, acidity, and freshness in the wines.
Correct.
It's totally transparent and obvious in these wines. The other thing, the kind of resulting thing, is the gentle handling, and all that stuff adds up that there's actually a little dissolved CO2 in almost all the wine.
Great question. Thank you. That's a great question. What Stefan likes to do is, so especially in this wine, once the ferment is over, there's still a lot of natural CO2 still from the ferment captured in the liquid, okay? So the only way to retain that in a very, very careful way is to reduce the temperature on the tanks, and then that's basically the only way he keeps it. This wine is usually bottled around January of the following year, so it doesn't spend a lot of time at the winery. It's usually harvested in September and then bottled in January. So yeah.
And we're making it with mostly, or maybe predominantly, or all Zweigelt.
Predominantly, always depending on the vintage. There's a little bit of variation here and there, but predominantly Zweigelt, yes.
And Zweigelt would be maybe the signature red grape, or one of them for sure.
Correct. So usually Zweigelt has a little bit. So for those of you who are familiar with Zweigelt, it will usually give a lighter style red, not super heavy. Fragrant nose, very peppery nose, but once it's in a rosé, it'll go more into this strawberry. Strawberry fields for everything. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
With a little bit of raspberry on it.
I even get this little like rhubarby kind of thing with it, like this little herbal thing with it too.
That's good, yeah.
The complexity on it, again, for like $13. That's why it's my house wine. So fresh, still has this delicacy to it. So we talk about rosés, and kind of mecca for rosé is Provence rosé, that is around this kind of color. But I don't know that necessarily a lot of Provençal rosé has this level of vibrancy and intensity and kind of like life to it.
That's exactly the point. Yeah.
So really nicely done. What else do we miss something we should talk about? We do sell some Zweigelt in the liter bottle from Stefan. He does some other things at the winery. Anything you want to mention that we maybe didn't touch on?
Stefan is doing such a great job. We've gone through organics, we've gone through vegan. If there are restaurateurs, we do a lot of kegs as well. So a lot of the products are in kegs. I think the single vineyards are his signature wines. That's really, really important. One of his wines that's unfortunately not with wine cellars was awarded best wine of Austria.
Sauvignon Blanc too.
Yeah, the Sauvignon Blanc is there as well. That is a that's a very unique Sauvignon Blanc. Thank you for bringing that up. That's super unique. It's definitely not like a Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand, but it's
the opposite of what we're kind of going to talk about here shortly.
But it's definitely a Sauvignon Blanc in its own right. That's for sure.
Yeah, I personally, I love it. It's more my style of Sauvignon Blanc than maybe what we will talk about, but it has this elegance, refinement that sometimes Sauvignon Blanc's like a ditzy blonde that just won't shut up. And I'm talking about myself, of course.
I'll just have another glass of rosé then.
But there are Sauvignon Blancs that are slightly more refined, that have a little bit more polish to them, like my friend Jan here. And that's what we're talking about, is something with a great level of refinement, and that I would want to put with really fine cuisine. We actually sell a ton of it into New Orleans. I think it's like the number one region for us. And if I was an on-premise Somm, I would love that wine. That is a total Somm geeky wine, but again, so versatile and has that same level of purity, freshness that all these other wines have. And again, $16 to $18, I think, is what we're talking about retail. So, we missed the DAC, which is another single vineyard site that we sell in these. That's here. A little more affordable than the Rotenpolen.
Yes, the DAC is a little bit of like let's call it a smaller version, like a B-level single vineyard of the Steinberg. So the Steinberg is definitely one of Stefan's absolute signature wines, and we decided to bring in the DAC, which is like a second tier from the Steinberg. Younger vines, great price quality ratio, and extremely versatile as well. It's definitely not as terroir driven as the Rotenpolen, but therefore much more versatile as well.
Yeah, well, it gives us 3 levels to work with. We have the introductory at 13 or 14 or 15, whether it's 750 or liter, and then the DAC at 16 to 18, and then the Rotenpolen at around 20 to 22. So we have layers there to expand into the quality levels. And again, for $20, you can get top of the line Gruner Veltliner. Yeah. And I want to say hi to some people that have joined us. I want to thank people for joining us here. My man Tommy Montero and
hey, Tommy, hi.
Say hi, Tommy.
Great to see you,
Tommy. And another Massachusetts resident, personal friend and colleague of mine, Mr. Ken Hoggins. He says he had the 2018 rosé last spring. Very nice, very good. And this man has a picky palate, so it's got to be good.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Ken, for joining us here. I think one last fun fact that I like telling people about Austria, and especially Niederösterreich, Lower Austria, is that in this region of Austria, which is a sub-region from all the other regions, we were looking at the map and you saw it break out, there's more Gruner Veltliner planted there than the rest of the world combined. Yeah,
that could be. I think it's like I think from the latest statistics, it's like 50% of all white varieties grown in Austria are Gruner Veltliner, and 50% of Lower Austria is Gruner Veltliner.
So. Yeah, you don't really find the grape variety too much. You saw it in New Zealand. So do you ever see it? We're going to transition here to New Zealand. So this is as good as it gets. Before Sauvignon Blanc took its foothold 30 years ago, Gruner Veltliner was supposed to be the grape for New Zealand.
Well, yeah, back in the, from what I know, I mean, what I've heard, I wasn't there. So like in the 80s and the 90s, there was still a lot of Müller-Thurgau going on in New Zealand. And then they stumbled across this clone of Sauvignon Blanc, and it just took off from there. That was basically the real starting point in New Zealand.
Yeah, maybe I messed up with Müller-Thurgau.
Yeah.
I should always check my facts before I start spouting my mouth, but it wasn't supposed to be Sauvignon Blanc, but we're going to talk about Sauvignon Blanc next.
Yeah. So should we go over to CPRO?
Yeah. Do you want to flash the video now, or do you want to do a little preamble to the video?
No. Oh yeah, I'll do the preamble. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Thanks. So O2, that's the company that I work for in New Zealand. We work it's run by a group of international investors, and they asked me to take care of the project in 2011. So they said, "Here, let's have a look at this. We would like you to bring you on board, and we would like you to develop this project with us." So there's something that's really, really important. I think you'll be showing that later on in the presentation of how the valleys are set up in New Zealand. Can you show that in the presentation, Bunny?
Let me pop that up and get it going here. Hang on one second. I think it's in this window. It's this presentation. Let's pop that full screen, and we can get that going. So we'll get some, that one?
Yeah, that one. Perfect. So we're in, so this whole thing here is Marlborough. So you have basically the longer valley is the main valley, which is called Wairau. And next to that is the smaller, sort of like a small little appendix. This one, exactly, perfect. That's the Awatere. That's where we are. And we are basically right on the seafront, right there. So I was on the plane down to New Zealand thinking about how Marlborough is set up. And all I knew was the Wairau. And so I thought, might be interesting to take a look at this. I don't really know what I'm going to be able to tell the investors, but all I know is that if you're going to make a new property, a new winery on the market, it should have a statement. It should have to be different and more expressive than what's out there. You have to have a different concept and a different story. And so I didn't really understand the concept of doing the same thing as your neighbor, which would have been in the Wairau. But then they put me into a car and drove me over the mountain range here. It's a pretty big pass there, and you go into the Awatere, and which is right next to the sea, which means you have 30 kmh winds, 20-30 kmh winds every day blowing in from the sea. So you're getting a lot of salt mist. You're getting a cooling, which is very, very important. And at the third, of course, which is the logical conclusion of that, is you're getting a much lower disease pressure in the vines. So especially in let's say hotter vintages like 2019, we still get really crisp, clear, beautiful, bright aromas, whereas let's say something that is a little more land inward is getting a little bit too much stagnant heat pools, which Sauvignon Blanc doesn't really like.
Yeah.
So I thought
all those aromatic precursors.
Right, exactly. And then the other thing is, of course, that like 90% of our vines are on hills facing north. So perfect exposure to the sun, perfect photosynthesis, all these things. And I thought, wow, this is tremendous. This is really, really tremendous. And so and then with Jordan from Wine Cellars, we decided to put this wine together, CPRO, and I am super happy about this product and super proud of it that it's doing so well.
Yeah, I think we have a point of differentiation, like you said. I think the wine quality is better than what you taste at that same price point from anywhere else in New Zealand. So there's some compelling, and of course, the name ties into where you're located.
Yeah.
Pearl of the Sea.
Totally.
Because when we
Totally.
take a look at the images and the video, it'll make sense. And we decided we worked with a designer to come up with a label, and it was the iridescent shell of the abalone that you have that probably are a stone's throw, literally, from the vineyard.
Yeah, it's called Pawa.
Pawa. And then, of course, we do kegs too. And we have the cutest little cans you've ever seen that are just out on the market now.
Yeah, it's beautiful. That's really beautiful. I'm super proud of it.
Let's try to take people there. We're going to take people there and try to give them a little feel for what we're talking about. And then we'll take a look at some pictures. We'll taste the wine. And then we'll talk about what sets it apart from, like I said, from its competition. So I'm going to share our video here. And 1 second. There we are. And I will blow us up, and hopefully we'll hear you above the wind. All right, Jan, you're on.
My name is Jan Cooks. I'm the winemaker of Sea Pearl. We're here in Marlborough in the Austria Valley. And today is the 4th of April. And we are working on the vintage 2020. So this is the Sauvignon Blanc. This is where the Sauvignon Blanc from Sea Pearl comes from. Right behind you, you see the sea and the Blanc, where the Sea Pearl originates from. And you can probably also hear the wind in the microphone. So those are right there several very, very essential things, because with the wind, you have, on the vicinity to the sea, you have the cooling effect. So the wind will blow through the vineyards on a constant basis and thereby cool the vines nicely, so you get the fresh aromas. At the same time, it will, with the wind, it will reduce disease, so disease pressure in the vines. And third, which is the most interesting fact, is that it will bring a little bit of salt also onto the grapes, which gives the wine a little bit of a salty, fresh texture. So those are right there the secrets of the Sea Pearl, which makes, which is, I think, a very, very beautiful wine from New Zealand. I'm very proud of it. I hope you enjoy it too. Stay safe, please. Enjoy it responsibly, and check in again. Thank you very much.
Nice job, buddy.
Yeah, thank you. Was a first take.
and I've told people, you've heard me, I've said it, and I'll say it publicly so you know that I've said it.
Facebook Live and
hang on, bear with me.
That's a Zoom bomb.
Almost. We had one the other day, so it wasn't fun. I think that it's one of the most interesting 2 minutes of terroir description I've heard, and we kind of set it up pretty nicely.
Thank you.
Talked about your north-facing slopes. I think we take a lot of things for granted in the wine industry, and one of the things that I think we take for granted there is the fact that those winds, that cooling effect, we talk about hot pockets and cooling effect. We talked, and you mentioned aromas, but even more important than aromas is the maintenance of acidity and the structure to a wine. So those cooler winds help maintain acidity to grapes, which translates into acidity in wine, which keeps the wine lifted and fresh.
Right, and that's exactly the point. What's a little bit what's happening right now is so we harvest the grapes much later than pretty much all of our neighbors, which allows us to get a much bigger variation of aromatics, which makes this wine a little bit singular in the entire market. What's in the same price range, because what most people are doing is they're harvesting the grapes very early, and thus giving it only let's say a very monodimensional approach. So let's say only one predominant aromatic, which is, let's say, capsicum or cut grass or gooseberries or whatnot. Whereas I want to go and develop things like lime and the very, very essential thing here is, of course, it's terroir based, which is you have a little bit of tomato stock going on and a little bit of rhubarb and some I mentioned lime, things like gooseberry as well, of course, which is typical Sauvignon Blanc, but a little bit of apples and pears as well. So it's a very unusual approach for Sauvignon Blanc, and the acidity, and that's what's really, really important, is there are a lot of people, of course, who might have had a bad experience with, things like heartburn or something. They've had a glass of Sauvignon Blanc. This will not happen here because the acidity is not as, let's say, apparent as in the normal wines. So this is much more consumer friendly than I would say most New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs.
Yeah, I find that because a lot of it harvested early, specifically to maintain acidity that's hard to maintain in the wine, and because they're looking for that aromatic profile, that herbaceous, very expressive aromatic without burning it out of the grape, they have this very tiny, narrow window where they have to harvest. And sometimes the acidity for me is so high that I know what they're doing to this wine. They're dumping a bunch of sugar in it, and they're trying to even out that acidity with a little bit of sugar. I know that's a no-no to say, but
don't say that.
What I get is a wine that has loads of acidity and tastes like residual sugar, gives me heartburn, gives me palate fatigue, and tires me right out.
Yeah, and the point is, of course, you want to have a product that you can drink a second glass of. You can go to, with the cans. You can go on a hike. You can party on the beach and have a second glass of it, and have fun. That's the whole thing about this product. It's all about fun, and the beauty about it is it has this romantic touch. Sea Pearl, it's like, doesn't get more romantic than that. And then, of course, it's food friendly, so you can have it pretty much all day long, starting with breakfast.
Yeah, we were pairing wine with Charlie Master on Wednesday, and he said it goes good with scrambled eggs.
Yeah, there you are.
But I also get, because you probably can have longer hang time on this, I get a more mature flavor profile beyond the fact that it's not this coarse acidity, that it still has freshness. But I get my number one most, I can think grass and grapefruit, sure, but what I get out of this wine almost dominantly is passion fruit.
Yes. Passion fruit.
You're not going to get unless you have long enough hang time to develop tropical flavors.
Exactly.
So me knowing a little bit about wine can tell you maybe a little bit about the terroir here, reverse engineering this wine, knowing what it takes to go in there. And for me, that's telling me something. It's about it. And when I see what you're talking about in that video, that's when the tire meets the pavement, and I have that aha.
Thank you. That's great. No, that's great. Thank you. Yeah. Well, it was also a funny vintage, under lockdown and everything. Mm-hmm. So was a new one.
Yeah, we talked to a bunch of our friends in the Southern Hemisphere about timing of harvest and what they had to go through, and a lot of them it hit in the middle of our pandemic, and
it was crazy. I mean, I arrived there, and 4 or 5 days later, roughly, they came with the lockdown, and it was a complete freeze, and I mean, luckily we were in the whole winemaking business, so which is called a very relevant industry. And so we make our wines with, so we only have vineyards. We don't have an actual winery. And so the wine has to be made in 5 different wineries. And so you're running around in your gear and all that stuff. And you can only see your contact winemaker, and that's only one person. So I literally saw like 7 people in 2 months. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Great photograph showing where how you're kind of you're in the valley.
Yes, this is facing north. So this is one of the vineyards where that's pretty much 80% of sea pearl, where 80% of sea pearl comes from. So this is facing north, roundabout in the afternoon, so we have windmills here, but they're not to make electricity. So that's what that pole there. That's basically to prevent any kind of stagnant pools of cold air that would destroy the shoots in springtime. So these are fans basically that will just take the cold air away.
Yeah, move air. Another great shot, maybe higher up.
Right.
And let's play devil's advocate. You plant in the valley because if you planted on the hilltop, you would have problems. Yeah.
Well, I didn't plant these vines. I didn't decide to plant these vines here. I was not around when they were planted. That was the initial ownership. So these vines were planted around 2000, somewhere between 2000 2003, and there are three main blocks. So this is of course the only block on the flats, and on the left you can see that sloping hill that falls towards the sea. Exactly. So that is covered with vines on the top as well. Okay. And that, for example, is one of our best vineyards with a beautiful north-facing slope. There are other vineyards as well, but it's mainly on the hills to get a much better exposure.
Yeah,
that's the main idea.
Exposure and aspect.
Yes, well, aspect. Yeah.
And so there, a couple really nice. I mean, it's just beautiful. And this is inland north again, northwest or so.
Exactly. This is northwest. Basically, those mountains on the far end of the picture, that's pretty much the end of the Awatiri. So the Awatiri is a very short, narrow valley, and this also shows a little bit like the way the wind can blow through. It develops a little bit of a funnel thing going on right through that valley. So you have that wind going right through, which just dries out the soil and dries out the grapes, and you just have to pay a lot of attention on what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that translates again into the wines with again more texture, more body. Because of longer hang time, maybe a little more dry extract too.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly.
Well, it sure shows in the wines, man. Amazing.
Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, this is definitely one of my more. These two are my favorite pictures. Where so when you're standing on this hill and looking down at the sea, and that's on the very, very far end. That's the North Island. So over there is Wellington. So right here in front of you, that's Cook Strait there, and that's like I've never taken a ferry, but I think it's something like 6 or 7 hours by ferry. Yeah.
So fresh and so clean, my friend.
Thank you.
Thank you. You have a lot to do with the atmosphere down there. Here's some hilltop vineyard sites.
Yes, that's a great site there, facing due north. So this is what it looks like during the morning. So this is of course taken during summer, you can really feel the sea coming in. In the video, I'm happy that the sound was actually pretty good. Usually when on a normal day, the wind is really, really strong. So I'm happy that the microphone was able to pick something up at all.
No, it sounded great. Actually, perfect. He said you might be able to hear the wind. Hopefully you can hear me. So
yeah, right. Exactly.
So you do. Obviously, you've got rows set up here for some manual harvesting and work.
Yep.
Nice. Hey, we have we always have to ask the question because inquiring minds want to know versatility on the wine. The Sea Pearl Sauvignon Blanc, beyond seafood. What do you like?
Beyond seafood.
No brainer, right?
Yeah, that's a no-brainer, of course, right? I think what would be really, really nice is something like an aglio e olio pasta with the Sauvignon Blanc. Personally, I mean, that's anything with a little bit of heat going on. Even something like something pretty hot, like let's say Indonesian, would go really beautifully. I think like a curry, a beautiful curry.
Little green curry.
Green curry, or I'm thinking more of Indian curries.
Okay. Yeah.
Something like with lentils and veggies going on. That would be really beautiful.
You got a lot of spice mimic here. That might be a nice bridge between the two of those. Right.
Vietnamese kitchen. Like those beautiful, awesome summer rolls with that. Perfect. I mean, I'm really trying to stay away from seafood as much as I can.
How about Chinese chopped chicken salad with a little goat cheese and some mandarin orange slices?
Perfect. Yeah, no, perfect. Absolutely perfect. Anything with poultry, definitely. Or just a beautiful risotto, just a very, very crisp, classical, beautiful risotto with a little bit of Parmesan on it. It's a no-brainer.
Some savory with sweet right there.
Yeah. Apart from that, like Italian kitchen, just take away the seafood. Hard to imagine, but
hard to imagine.
Right.
So I think we really transported ourselves. I think I wrote in a personal Facebook post.
Lee?
Jan.
Hey, you made it.
Sorry about that. A little internet connection, which is abnormal for me.
All good.
I went and upgraded my internet to do all these things. But I think we hit a lot of good stuff, man.
Thank you.
Anything you want to say? Anything?
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for everybody's attention. Thank you for tuning in. I hope everybody's safe. Really. And yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to enjoy good wines. I think that's crucial.
Yeah, I think if you're not enjoying wine and it's only an intellectual experience or a financial experience, you're probably missing the boat.
Bingo.
So if you're up late again, we thank you for being with us at 11:08 or so.
11:08. Yes, it is 11:08.
Yeah, definitely past your kids' bedtime. It may not be past your bedtime, but we appreciate you staying up late with us. If you want to repeat this kind of thing, we'll do the same thing tomorrow, a regular Wine Cellars Wine Weekend with a mutual friend of ours, a Wine Cellars family member, Mr. Matteo Gentilini.
Oh, fantastic.
We're going to taste some La Fiera wines tomorrow afternoon. And we've got Wine Cellars Wine Wednesday and Wine Cellars Wine Weekend lined up through the 4th of July. So everybody come back and join us Saturdays and Wednesdays. Thanks for joining us this Friday.
Thank you.
Drink in good health.
Yeah.
Some Sea Pearl.
Cheers.
And Pratsch.
Yes. Take care, everybody, and thank you.
Stay with me, Jan.